All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk about one of the most powerful and often completely invisible dynamics in our relationships. It's called projective identification. And honestly, it's a concept that helps explain so much about how we unconsciously influence each other, especially with the people we're closest to. To really get what this is all about, I want to start with a story. This happened in my practice, more than 25 years ago. A fundamentalist minister came to see me, and he was just beside himself with worry about his high school-age daughter. And as he was talking about all his fears for her, something really strange happened. I mean, I could almost physically see this dark shadow moving from him and just completely engulfing her. You see, he was projecting all of his own disowned fears, his own repressed sexuality, right onto his daughter. He was just so convinced she was going to get into trouble. And what do you know? It was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. 6 months later, she was pregnant. So what was really going on there? I mean, this was way more than just a father worrying about his kid, right? There was a much deeper psychological force at work, one that was literally shaping reality for both of them.
Well, that force has a name, projective identification. And look, it's not the same as simple projection, where you just see your own stuff in someone else. No, this is one of the few psychological defenses that has to involve at least two people. It's like this interactive, totally unconscious dance.
The idea itself actually has a pretty fascinating history. A psychoanalyst named Melanie Klein came up with the term way back in 1946. She was trying to make sense of the very earliest, most primal relationships, like the one between a mother and her baby.
So what is it, really? Well, Klein defined it as a process where you take these unwanted parts of yourself, you kind of split them off, and then you project them into someone else. But, and this is the absolute key, that other person then starts to feel possessed by and identified with those exact parts you just gave them. You can really break it down into 3 simple steps. First, you have the projection. The minister couldn't face his own sexuality, his own stuff, so he pushed it out. Second, reception. His daughter, because they're in this close family system, unconsciously caught that projection. And then third, identification. She actually started to act it out, becoming the very thing he was so afraid of, and she got pregnant.
Okay, now here's where this gets really complex, but it's so important to understand. The effect of projective identification changes dramatically depending on the power dynamic in the relationship. Who is projecting onto whom? Well, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, this really shows you the 2 sides of the coin. When a more powerful person, like a parent, projects onto someone less powerful, like their child, the outcome is almost always negative. We're talking exploitation, control. But, and this is amazing, when it's the other way around, when a less powerful person, like a client in therapy, projects onto someone more powerful, like their therapist, it can actually be the very foundation for healing. It becomes empathy, what we call empathic attunement.
So, how do therapists actually use this incredibly powerful dynamic for good? How do we navigate this whole thing to help someone heal instead of accidentally harming them? Well, it takes a really, really finely tuned inner compass.
We work inside what some people call the intersubjective field, or the analytic third. You can think of it like a shared psychic space that gets created between 2 people. It's where the conscious minds, and even more importantly, the unconscious minds of the client and the therapist are constantly interacting and influencing one another. And this creates the #1 challenge for any therapist. When I suddenly start feeling lost or anxious in the middle of a session, I have to stop and ask myself, okay, wait, is this my feeling or am I picking up on something unconscious from my client? And that is the difference between what we call introjective identification and projective identification. Is the client's story just hitting a nerve and triggering my own unresolved stuff? The beliefs and feelings I've picked up from my own life, my introjects? Or am I accurately picking up on their unexpressed feelings through true projective identification? To put it a little more bluntly, and honestly, this is the most practical way to think about it, as a therapist, you have to be able to tell your stuff from the client's stuff, period. It is absolutely the single most important part of doing this work well. So, when a therapist correctly identifies that they're feeling a projection from a client, that feeling of being lost, for instance, the goal isn't to push it away. The goal is to metabolize it. You have to actually feel it, contain it without getting swept away by it, and then hand it back to the client in a way they can finally understand. You might say something like, wow, I'm starting to feel a little lost here. I wonder if maybe I'm picking that up from you. This simple act shows the client their feelings are manageable, and it helps them build their own emotional strength.
When you really step back and look at this whole dynamic outside of the therapy room, you start to see that it's not about finding fault. It's not about blaming the person doing the projecting or the person receiving it. It's really just about understanding a fundamental and, yeah, often messy part of what it means to be human and connected to each other.
So let's just recap the big takeaways here. First, this is all happening unconsciously. It's not intentional manipulation. Second, it's always strongest in our closest relationships, families, couples, you name it. Third, and this is crucial, the person who receives the projection is not at fault. And finally, just recognizing that this dynamic might be happening, that is the first giant step toward changing it for the better.
So I guess I'll just leave you with this question to think about. In your own life, in your family, with your partner, maybe even at work, where might one of these unseen projections be quietly shaping one of your relationships right now?